Hello, everyone. We are very happy to have you here for our interviews on the UNESCO Center for Peace Summer Program. We are delighted to have here the Executive Director of UNESCO Center for Peace, Mr. Gidi Joken, um, social justice activist, and I am Mariluna Garcia, Youth Ambassador for UNESCO Center for Peace in Mexico. And now, Fernanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Areli. My name is Fernanda Chima. I've been working with the UNESCO Center for Peace for more than 3 years now. And to introduce myself is the first time I will use this word. I'm a networker. I love being a global citizen, but I think that one thing that I'm doing now is connecting and making these connections the most, taking the most advantage of what we can get from the best of the people. So it's amazing to have Mr. Blood here to share with us some insight on the questions we have. So our first question for you today would be relating to the conference that we just have had. What are some of the reasons why venture capital is not used in other countries as much as in the US? So I was looking up, and you have more than 1,000 venture capital firms in the US, and in Mexico you only have around 43, 44. So why is there so much difference between some countries and others?
That's a great question. I think in general, it's just the nature of being less developed. So these governments are more focused. Their priorities are typically more focused on some of the crisis management issues, and the way their funding is deployed is they're trying to put out one fire after another on issues that will bring up their economies to a point where they feel they're stable enough, for example, to be able to start funding them in these more futuristic, in a sense, ways like we have adapted to here in America. So one example for with Mexico is, I know there's been a lot of issues over the years with corruption and narcotics and violence in the country, and those when in situations like that, the countries end up with a hyper focus on trying to solve these challenges so that they can have a stable and safe environment to develop their economy. So I would say part of it is just in particular with these underdeveloped countries, is they're just behind the curve as far as time and maturity in their economies to get to a place where they feel stable enough. They start thinking about, okay, how do we transition into this future and start creating these jobs? One other really important point is, I think it's just also a lack of knowledge in how to do it in this new global economy. That's one advantage, though, that they have, because it's so easy for us to connect. Today, Andrew and I were just giving a presentation to, what is it, Guy, 50, 60 countries around the globe?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, which is just wonderful. This access that we have, this global communication that we already have established on Earth, makes it so much easier to accelerate the adoption in these countries like Mexico, to go from 43 venture capital to 400 in a few years, versus that's what it's taken the US the last 40 years to do. So they have an opportunity to actually catch up faster. And the best way to do that is to leverage the expertise in a country like ours, where we've done it so many times. We know how to do it. We've also done it with other countries. Currently at 7BC, we work closely with the government of China. We have a fund that we work with them, doing the same things that we had discussed today, in helping create jobs there by leveraging venture capital to bring technology of global companies that are doing extremely well here in the US. They can license the technology over in that country and create jobs and create copycat models of that they can start using in their country. So that's probably, does that answer your question? It's kind of a long-winded answer, but
Yeah,
okay.
there are a lot of things that happen in other economies that happen faster and wider because of their expertise in certain areas. So I do think that it has to do with it. But I
Yeah.
will let Guy go with the next question.
Yes. I
Okay.
mean, education and access to the training and infrastructure is so critical too. Andrew brought up a great point in a country that has very poor roads. So it's hard for, if you don't have the infrastructure to have 1,000 people in a new office park area that have to come from miles away to travel there, and it would take them 2 or 3 hours, one each way. That's a very inefficient system. You have to have the infrastructure and roads first. So there are a tremendous amount of challenges typically to overcome depending on the area or region. But there are solutions today that can make it happen much faster. And venture capital makes sense because you're not losing money like governments are so good at doing. They're typically good at, they're less efficient with their capital. They're better at losing money. The venture capital model is a way where they're investing in their own economies. They're investing in the education and development and training of their people. They're closing their income gaps. They're preparing for this automation and next wave of technology. And at the same time, they're making money doing it, more money that they can continue to reinvest. Instead of losing money, then having this budget burden where then suddenly they don't have the capital, the additional capital to deploy to improve the economy. They only have enough to support what they already have.
Okay, thank you very much, Lexington. I'm going to actually my question is going to go to what I call ground zero. As a lot of you spoke to our delegates there, but now this message will go out to the general public, and especially in places like Africa, Latin America, where people don't even know what is a venture capitalist. Not only I would like you to define what is a venture capitalist, but there are people called angel venture capital. Some are considered angels, some are considered like devils. So I would like you to kind of talk about all that to give a sense to someone that is still confused about this concept of this concept. Please go ahead and take some time
Okay.
to explain what
Yeah.
it is and what it is not.
That's a great question. So an angel investor, we'll start simply. An angel investor, let's say, Fernanda, you have an idea for a new company to start there in your country in Mexico. And you know me now that you know me. So say you call me, you send me your idea. I think it's great. You need, say, $100,000 to get to a place where you can build, say you have some tech idea, you're going to build a new website or some new software. And in order to build that version to see if it's something that is going to work, it'll take $100,000. Okay. You would initially maybe come to someone like me. And if I thought your idea was good enough, I would invest in you as an angel investor, just me, and maybe I'd bring in my friend Andrew, and we would both we'd each give you $50,000, and we'd be your angel investors. We're individual investors in that sense. Okay. And then you would build your product to a point where then you needed more money. Now, it comes a time when you need more money so that you can actually maybe hire more staff, a sales team, because after you build your product, we realize you've really have something great here. And it needs more resources in order to grow and in order to get out there and capture a market and begin to make money back. And in that scenario, then you would want to go to a venture capital firm. Now, the difference between the two is a venture capital firm, there's access to more capital because there's many more people and investors involved. It's a big, large group of investors who are involved in venture capital typically. So the specific definition is a venture capital is a form of private equity and a type of financing that investors provide to startup companies and small businesses that are believed to have long-term growth potential. So, and venture capital comes in a few forms. It can come from investors, individual investors like me and Andrew, or investment banks, or even financial institutions. As mentioned today, there's these government hybrid joint venture funds. For example, we have $100 million of Chinese government money, and we have $100 million of our investors' money for a $200 million fund, and that's one venture capital group. So the venture capital group typically has a very specific mandate and structure in how they're going to deploy their capital. We've all agreed that we're going to invest in companies like Fernandez, only maybe tech companies that are doing $100,000 a month in revenue or something. So there's a particular stage and time and size of the business where we are actively deploying our capital that we have great expertise in with all the members of our investment team. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I would say that if we take these hypotheses to real life, I do have a business idea. You can invest it in Mexico, and you don't need $100,000. I think you would need, I don't know, like $100,000 would do.
Right, well, and so you bring up a good point, however, Fernanda. $100,000 might do in your mind right now. However, think of this scenario. Say the $100,000, suddenly your company is so much more successful. There's so much demand. There's demand not just in Mexico. There's demand from the US. There's demand from Africa, from Europe. Everyone's loving your product so much, and the demand's so heavy, it's crashing your software because you didn't plan on so much success. Well, in order to not lose that opportunity, you would desperately need a lot more capital to hire a much bigger team in order to support that growth, which is also creating a lot of jobs and tax revenue for your country. So you're actually providing a lot of positive economic stimulus to your own country. So in that situation, would you rather stay small and say no to all these extra customers and money, or would you rather say yes, I'm going to do what it takes and go raise more money through these venture capitalists so that I can create more opportunities for my fellow countrymen and women, and also share this wonderful product that advances the world as a whole?
Well, what I really like about venture capitalists is that they will also guide you through the process. So what you were saying is like, would you want to expand it? I think that CEOs would need to know when to expand and how to do it. But well, again, with the experience that you have, it should be a really good complement. But I will leave Ireli to ask the next question.
Thank you. Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Well, for me, so this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially being Mexican, and is that in Mexico, the majority, well, as you may know, the majority of our population is working on the informal sector. And doing some research, 56.7% of the population generates only 22.5% of the GDP. And it is because they are they are not working formally for a company. So with those figures, I would like to know how, well, I know that Mexico is consumed by corruption, but how, what actions would you take for Mexico's system to improve and for our economy to continue growing, but in such a way that approximately 57% of the population is benefited?
Well, there's two ways to look at this question. That's an excellent question, by the way. One way is it in some scenarios, it doesn't necessarily matter if those statistics change, those ratios, 57% to 22% of the GDP. If through the model that we had talked about, if you educate, so say a lot of those workers today are, let's say they're agriculture workers. They're helping produce the food that they're shipping to the United States because we're very big consumers of the delicious Mexico produce. Okay, I eat it every day. So I do. So, but let's say we're transitioning to an automated economy, okay? And that's happening in ag tech as well. There's going to be, there are already today in existence technologies that will come in and replace a lot of workers that will make it faster and more efficient to process this food and make it so that we can feed more people in the world as we grow, because that's a huge sustainability issue moving into the future. So we need that. However, the concern for Mexico might be, well, I'm going to lose my job. Well, that's where this education aspect comes in, for free education to train them to have a tech position, maybe repairing or let's say they're in charge of these robots that are going to replace them in the fields. So they're saving their backs, they're making more money, and they're helping maintain these machines that are doing their jobs for them. And in this scenario, perhaps it doesn't matter if the GDP ratio changes, because everything's moving up accordingly. They're getting paid more, they're having to work less for their time. So they it might require more citizens still to do a lot of these different tech jobs, but they're making a much better living and creating much better opportunities for them and their families and future generations because of it. I think it's a challenge to try to, I think for the foreseeable future, there will always be the majority of a population will be doing most of the work and potentially creating the least amount of GDP. And that is a statistical macroeconomics model that is fundamentally tied to population densities, and the easiest way to say it is just the way the world works. There's no situation where only so many people can actually produce so much, and certain people have to manage and create these businesses, right? And only so many people can be the boss, and it typically takes more people to execute. So in general, I think that those statistics are less likely to change over time, but it doesn't mean that there's not solutions that can improve the welfare of the general populations in these developing economies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blood. Yeah, very, very much agree. Improve the resources that you already have. Thank you.
Yes, and focus on different statistics. Like how can we train them for the future and give them access to be able to fund their ideas if they're a budding entrepreneur like Fernanda, who it seems like she's beaming with ideas, but she may have limited access or not know how to go about it, and she'd end up going her whole life maybe not starting a business because she's not sure where to start, or that she has the opportunity to do it. That's the big difference maker. Yeah.
Well, I think that for us, the most crucial point is actually the money, where we can get it from, and to start everything. I have been also giving some lectures on startups and leadership, but I think that the point in which you are already starting developing, but you need to grow, you need the money to grow, and the only place where you can find it is from family, from friends. I know some tech companies in Silicon Valley, they just started out with angel investors from people they know. So I think it's really hard for startups to reach out to good investors and to pitch the idea whenever it's in this stage that is just starting. They just pay attention to the companies that have already revenues. So it's actually really hard to get them to see you when you're starting. So maybe I could go on that side for my question. What would be the best solution for these startups that don't have yet revenues to go to an angel investors and pitch and get that attention they need to grow?
That's a great question. And that's exactly why there needs to be this fundamental shift, where instead of here in America, where we're just buying up, say your company did so well, Fernanda, and we invested in you. I invested in you as an angel. It did so well. Then you came back to us as a venture capital fund, said, help, I'm growing too fast and making too much money. I need help. I need to hire more people. So we invest in you again, and then you do so well. Apple calls you up and says, hey, Fernanda, we love your company. We'd like to offer you $1 billion for it, and they buy your company. And then they are taking that wealth and transferring it back here to America. That's what's happening. And that doesn't help Mexico over the long term. Okay, you've done some wonderful things there, but there ends up being a wealth shift. That they will still be your company in Mexico making money, but now Apple gets the profits and the US government also gets some of the taxes, okay, instead of Mexico. So this is why what we discussed, what Andrew and I discussed that we do at 7BC Venture Capital is we would work with the government of Mexico to create a fund where the mandate is we invest in Mexico companies. We can bring other companies from America that are doing very well to ensure that the investment gets a good return and creates jobs quickly. But a portion of those funds would go to Series A or brand new startups from scratch like yours, Fernanda, where a portion of that can be set aside to invest in companies like you. And there's a mandate to do it. So as long as you are one of the best candidates, there would be an application process there for the country that would be open to all entrepreneurs. And, you know, I heard yesterday or over the weekend how you won your position at UNESCO because you impressed everyone so much off of your $10 scholarship from your mother. So I imagine you would have a very good chance, okay? So you would submit your application, and because you're so talented, you'd have the opportunity to get in front of the investment committee that decides to invest in your early stage. And if you do well, if you're one of the companies that makes it further, then there's additional capital in the fund to support you through the later growth stages that requires millions of dollars instead of maybe $100,000 to start. That's the way that's really the way to do it, because it is extremely hard for someone like you to come to me and say, Lexington, I know you don't know Mexico very well, but you know me, but here's my idea, and you don't understand my market. And so, but I know it's great, but I'm not sure enough about Mexico that I feel that I could add enough value, okay, because we don't have a team in conjunction with Mexico and the Mexican government and other entrepreneurs there, that it's more challenging to invest in you because of that. So that's why it's important to create these joint venture partnerships, venture capital funds within these countries that maintain the capital and wealth inside of the country with the job creation and with the business growth support.
So I actually had the idea that you could share with us some of the links or some of the platforms where you can get these competitions, and you can sign up and you can get more recognition from other parts and get the funds. But perhaps that would depend on country to country. So if what I'm getting from you is that you need to go through the process on your own country, then it's going to vary a lot. Is that also true? Like there's no platform like crowdfunding or these crowdfunding platforms for other countries. It would depend on the situation.
Well, there are. Look, it's not to say that there are not opportunities that exist today, Fernanda. There's nothing to stop you from, for example, here's one thing you could do, and we all have access, or most of us do, to the internet nowadays, and it's very good at actually sorting out information for us. So you can go onto Google and generally search for venture capital, angel funding in my country. Maybe there's some small business funding that's available. There's also a lot of nonprofits in a lot of countries that are trying to support entrepreneurs and create wealth that have free money to give, grants. You can get government grants to start your business, and you can submit applications. So I would suggest that any of you who are interested in that path to start there. look at what resources in your country. And then outside of that, probably stumble onto things on the internet of these various maybe crowdfunding. It was a good term that that are global, but they have one set up for your region. So where you could submit your business idea and 1,000 different people could fund it or pay for your product in advance so that then you could manufacture. It's not to say there's no opportunities, there certainly are. And I would start with local in your country, in your local ministry office, and ask them what resources they have available. You'd be surprised. They'll at least be able to point you in some direction. And then outside of that, though, for these government-specific venture capital type funds, that's something that would be probably more aligned with, you'd want to contact us or someone like us. Search for, in America, you could also search for funds that invest in Latin American countries. So I know a lot of venture capital funds that are based in the US that have US investors, but have a lot of expertise and people on running those venture capital funds who are from Latin America, but they've come here and raised a lot of capital or made a lot of money. And now they are investing exclusively in their home countries to help support their economies, and they believe so much in their citizens. There's so much more opportunity. And there are a lot of those funds here in the US that are Latin American only, or we invest in Brazil, and search for them here in America. There's more resources than you think, and you could submit to them across borders, and they would invest. They only invest in people like Fernanda, for example. They wouldn't even invest in me. They wouldn't. Their funds are not set up to invest in someone like me. They'd say, Lex, I'm sorry, you're not from Mexico. You don't know enough about it other than the produce that you love to eat there, and that's not good enough for us. You don't get our money. Okay? We invested in Fernanda. All right.
Okay.
That's how that works, okay?
Thank you. So this has been a very inspiring and educative interview because it started more with your presentation. That was a really wonderful presentation. As we conclude, and like I stated to you and Andrew, is that now being the kind of person I am, I'm already thinking about putting a system in place so that people like Fernanda and others across the globe that have some ideas, bankable ideas in a very structured way, could receive the kind of funding. Okay, angel investor. Of course, we are lucky to know you, to have met you, so we could actually just. She may just send a message to you, say, okay, what about this idea? But there's countless number of other people out there that will never get the opportunity to meet with someone like you. So, but I'm more into process, so I'm into working with you. I know. Thank you also for being judge in this panel of this delegate that are working on this project. So, but I want above that, because things will be moving online. So we want to have put a system in place whereby you and 7BC could be providing a regular kind of lecture to folks that will be knocking at door. We have a reliable network across the globe where you could be an expert on what I would call all venture. All venture. So what do you think about an idea like that?
Oh, we'd love to explore that opportunity. Absolutely. Look, this is what 7BC is about. It does stand for 7 borderless continents. We believe it's a global world. The opportunity to make it more transparent across borders is more available today than ever before, and it's only going to get better. There are a lot of ways to also deal with some of these unique more granular problems in some of these countries where there's so much fear and worry around corruption in the political environment. There are protective measures to take where there's no country essentially that we would be afraid of moving into and creating these kinds of programs where everyone's protected from those situations, and these countries can start these programs and really start sprinting more, running. Right now, a lot of countries are crawling and walking and sometimes taking a step backwards. They can start running, into the future much faster this way. And I know a lot of this focus seems like it's just all about money, but it really is about people in the planet, because if the way that the world is modeled today, citizens are simply forced to do what's available to them today to put food on the table. And through funding, that's how we can advance the world into cleaner technologies that also pay people more money, that also that gives them more time, that gives the government more dollars. And by eliminating some of these borders and having these global cooperations, it also allows societies to get to know one another more intimately. That brings more of a world peace understanding that we're all in this together. And it's really hard to think of ways that using models like this that people lose. It's the planet wins, the people win, the government wins, and this is how we actually push the whole global cause of let's figure out how to actually be better to one another, to close some of the inequality, to stop the ridiculous things that are in existence today, such as, to me, it is so shameful that we live in a world in 2020 with these technologies where I can talk to you guys all over the globe right now, and there are still people starving that don't have access to food and clean water. That we have the solutions to fix that. But the only way to do that, the money works. We're a global economy, and everyone uses that word for a reason. It runs off of money. So you have to be smart about how you leverage your money to make this happen. It is the only way it will happen. Fortunately, all these UNESCO members and the UNESCO mission are people of the same spirit and mind that care so much about this. But caring and discussing and talking about all the issues is one thing, but how do you actually tackle these? Well, this is what it takes. It takes new structures that involve new micro economies and macro economies and financial structures to move the world forward in that direction. And money is the tool to actually solve these problems.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. And just for the information, Fernanda will be the point person in all these ideas. It go in my head, and then of course you have direct so I'll be calling from time to time. But we definitely going to put just like when you're answering her question, just knowing how to start the process in your country is something that will be helpful to so many. So we are going to work together, put a system in place. At least maybe once or twice a month, we'll be inviting you to reach out to different people from around the world to address a specific issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guy, Fernanda, and Areli. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Bye-bye.
Lexington. It was an honor to have you.
Yes, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
Next time.
you.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.